You now find me in a very scenic gas station because that's the natural home when you have one of these. That is a supercharged LT4 GM V8 making about 650 horsepower, so you're gonna get this view a lot. Now, if you watched the earlier video with the EV, that's kind of your background to an ECD product. They are quite special. Now, what the EV one will not do under any circumstance is sound like this. That is about half throttle and all of my bravery. This is a lot of power in a Defender, and the roads out here in Florida get like this special grease on them when it rains just a bit. I have learned to be fearful of the road grease. Again, like the EV, everything in here is bespoke. This project name is Loki's Toy, and Loki has a sense of humor because this is a belligerent amount of horsepower for a Defender. So the basic package is the same. You still get a completely rebuilt Defender, in this case again a 110, but this is just one of the powertrain options that they have available. This is probably the gnarliest one that you can get. It's the LT4 in the Defender. It's just the subtle differences. The last one we had kind of like an open pore natural leather. This is more of a slick black interior. This is like the leather interior you'd find on like a new Mercedes is what it feels like. This one also has what I think are Recaro sport seats. They definitely have like side bolsters and stuff. They're a bit differently shaped. And this is the kind of thing that you can pick when you have an ECD Land Rover. You can just pick all this stuff. We have aggressive red gauges to match that demonic engine. And I think the experience is a lot like that of a G63 in that it's like a high performance car on stilts. You don't need 650 horsepower, but it does help. So the on-road manners versus the EV, well, I think one thing is that the V8 kind of rumble hides a lot of the noises you were hearing in the EV because EVs are silent. Like, I'm sure the gear whine is still happening and the tires are still making noise, but all I hear is sweet V8 music and a little bit of supercharger. I haven't driven it, but I would expect that the 450 horsepower LT1 motor, not the LT4 supercharged, might be the sweet spot of the powertrains on offer. But I think that the additional power of the LT4, again, lets me experience how well that these things are built. I like the contrasting red stitching. I like the OE fit of this Land Rover, which I assure you was better than they were built new in the 1980s. I'm glad I drove this one because it does show you how far you can take the concept. If you want it built with a hot rod V8 and some sinister black leather with red stitching, they're happy to build it for you. Versus the other one I drove in more of a neutral color and more of a natural leather, a lot more of a cruiser. This one feels more like I'm a character in an action movie. You can even customize things like the brakes, even the fuel tank. There's no limit to the customization, not just in terms of aesthetic things like leather, but also mechanical things. How do you want it to drive? I think the Ram TRX is the only thing that comes close to just like giggle factor of like going fast in a ridiculous vehicle. That is something. Now, one of the other things I got a chance to do at the ECD facility was spec out my dream Land Rover. They have a really cool digital configuration tool, which it doesn't even afford like all the options you could. For example, like this leather seat has 3 or 4 different parts of it, and I could make each part of that seat a different color if I wanted. The simulator kind of only does like one color per seat. But I got a chance to play around with some of the options, and it's amazing how easily you can translate your dream into something tangible, like a 3D render. I hope that one will get lost in the mix and find its way to my driveway, but to be honest, I didn't put down the required deposit today, so hopefully they don't notice. But I think that the process of building one is part of like building your IKEA furniture. It's making it yours. And it's really just the fun parts of a project. Somebody else is taking care of the building it, the designing it, making sure all the parts work together. You just get to do the fun part, like picking how it looks, picking how you want it to drive, and all the rest is handled. So being that involved with basically the development of your made-for-you car, I think is pretty special, considering that most of these are between $200,000 to $300,000 US, and that's a lot of money. But there are regular SUVs that cost that much now. Bentley Bentayga is in the low 4s, and they do not have as many customization options. So it's a lot of money, but I think if you are going to spend a lot of money, you get it back. But it's the little drivability things that I like, you know, heated and cooled seats. That's just nice. That's stuff beyond nice paint and a big engine. And it's those livability things, I think, that make this an everyday proposition. If you wanted to, there's no reason you couldn't drive this every day in Canada, because it has all-wheel drive. Now, the other thing is that most of these are like full-time four-wheel drive. You just select high or low range, but that too is customizable. You could get front and rear diff locks. You could make manual locking hubs in the front axle if you wanted. You can have it your way like Burger King. Even if you're not on it, the V8 sound is just so cool. You hear a little bit of supercharger whine and a lot of that classic V8 rumble. It really does make you feel pretty badass. Just like the EV, we're off-road again, but this is about as off-road as most of these will go. They could go on some pretty crazy terrain, but that's just not the use case for these things costing what they do. They are more for looking stylish and feeling cool, which I'm doing both right now. Yeah, there's no mistaking it for a modern vehicle like over the bumps. It's better than any Land Rover Defender has ever been, but it's still not smooth like a modern 4x4 would be. But I think that's kind of the charm of having something like this, is that it's all the fun parts of the old and all the conveniences of the new stuff. And unlike a modern SUV, you're the only one with this one. For Driving.ca, I'm Clayton Seams, and for a full written article where I go more in depth on the ECD facility and how they make these cool vehicles, check out our website.